Greetings everyone, this is Connor from Dagora TV, and in this video we're talking about how the Summerset Isles expansion for the Elder Scrolls Online could lead to it being a good time to return to the game. So as many of you will know, the Elder Scrolls Online Summerset is the new expansion for the Elder Scrolls MMO, the Elder Scrolls Online, and is set to release on May 21st. There's been a closed beta where high profile members in the community and members of the game press have been able to jump in and play the game, and kind of led to giving their first impressions of the game over this past week. So I've been kind of soaking a lot of that up, and I kind of wanted to share a little bit of what their kind of a roundup of their thoughts kind of tend to be, and how it could kind of tend to people like us, which are the single player Elder Scrolls fans. As a little bit of background, if you don't know my history with the Elder Scrolls Online, is that I was very much excited for the Elder Scrolls Online. I played a lot of MMOs, and if you hang around my channel at all, I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan of the single player game, so I was very much anticipating this game, really looking forward to it. And after playing around about 30 hours after launch and playing quite a bit in the kind of those big beta weekends that they had, I kind of decided that the game really wasn't for me at that moment in time, and I went away for a while. But then I came back when the 1 Tamriel update came out, and I played quite a lot of the game then, and kind of tended to like the game. And it's become kind of a process for me where I just kind of jump in every so often. You know, every time, you know, I just kind of get that itch to kind of go back in, I go and play it. And I kind of would say that I do like the game now. It's just not as good as not really what I wanted it to be, that perfect hybrid between, you know, the Elder Scrolls and MMO ideologies that I kind of wanted it to be. I didn't think it's kind of got to that point, but I do think that the 1 Tamriel update, and I'll kind of go into this at the end of this video and I'll do a bit of a roundup of my thoughts, was a huge step in the right direction into getting it to that point. So anyway, if you don't know, for the Elder Scrolls Online there's been a lot of DLC for the game. You know, ever since the game went buy-to-play or free-to-play with Tamriel Unlimited back in 2015, there's been a lot of stuff, ranging from the single-player expansions, like Orsinian, that were known for a single-player challenge, or to, you know, brand new quest lines and skill trees with the Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood, to new dungeon areas like Dragonbones or Horns of the Reach. There's been a lot of stuff for the Elder Scrolls Online, and new content coming out fairly regularly ever since the game became buy-to-play, and there's an optional subscription model with ESO Plus where you can get all of these micro DLCs. Well, not micro DLCs, but DLCs really. And if you didn't know, they have also these things called expansions, where with MMOs this tend to be a very common thing. You know, with World of Warcraft you have things like Cataclysm, you have Wrath of the Lich King, you have, you know, Legion and stuff like that. It's a known thing for MMOs to every year to 2 years to have a major expansion on their hands, and the Elder Scrolls Online has one in the past. It had Morrowind that came out last year, that came out to major success from fans. Fans tend to really like the Morrowind expansion, and this is the new one that they've got coming out, the Elder Scrolls Online Summerset. And the Morrowind expansion, if you didn't know, was the one that brought us back to Vvardenfell, and there was kind of really harping on the nostalgia front. It added a new trial, a brand new class, the Warden class, where you get to take control of a bear, and it added a new PvP Battlegrounds mode, basically. Not Battlegrounds in the sense of PUBG, but like it was a player versus player with like an arena kind of style area. And this second major expansion is adding the island of Summerset, and it's going to add a brand new skill line which is completely based on the Sigil order. And the basic premise of this expansion is that Queen Aerin, who's the leader of the Aldmeri Dominion, which is where the Summerset Isles kind of fall into that territory of the Summerset Isles, Valenwood and elsewhere being part of that faction of the Aldmeri Dominion, now allowing external races other than the Altman to come into the Summerset Isles for the first time in the country's history. So the big huge area of that is basically of what the lore is kind of going into in the story about what this expansion is going to be, is basically the dynamic of the people of Summerset being kind of either happy or unhappy with all these new cultures coming into Summerset for the first time, and seeing that kind of cohesion of so many different cultures come into it, and seeing how much of that an effect it has on the confidence of the people in the leadership of the Aldmeri Dominion, and how people generally take to having kind of foreigners coming into their land. So if I'm going to be honest, I think it's a pretty cool premise. And the island of Summerset and the Summerset Isles as a whole, as we've only seen really Auradon, and Auradon is the smaller of the two islands. And the main island of Summerset is something that I think a lot of people have been really intrigued to see in the Elder Scrolls universe. And while granted, I think a lot of Elder Scrolls fans would agree that the way that they do it in the kind of MMO space and the way they accommodate it is not going to be as good as what we would be able to get. You know, if Bethesda got their hands on a land or something like that, it's still better than nothing. You know, it's still definitely cool to be able to go in and be able to see all this stuff for the first time and everything, and kind of get a general idea of how this is supposed to look. And by the look of the stuff of what they've got in the trailers and everything, the game looks really damn good, and it looks like they've really grabbed hold of this kind of heavily fantasy orientated landscape in Summerset Isles, and it's going to be really interesting to see how kind of magical enchanting it's going to be when you go into walk around the world and everything, because it looks very much different than what we've seen in Auradon, and looks very much different to anything else we've seen in the Elder Scrolls Online. But the thing that would possibly make this expansion a good time to return, rather than, you know, having a brand new premise in comparison to the rest of the world that we've got on there and everything, and having a brand new story where you can just kind of jump in and play from the off like we had with Morrowind, the good reason why I think people like us will be able to play it is because they say it's a really, really good story and a really, really good expansion for the people who love the lore of the Elder Scrolls. There's a lot of lore-heavy stuff in there. It's not the kind of thing where you can kind of jump in as a player who doesn't know the Elder Scrolls franchise. You know, it's the kind of thing where you kind of need to be a pretty big fan and pretty deep into the lore to kind of generally understand what's going on. And the people who, you know, watch this channel and, you know, kind of take part in the discussion along with me on these kind of topics, it seems the kind of expansion for us to kind of get lost into in regards to the story. Because, you know, a lot of it is down to the basic of the Sigil Order, and the Sigil Order, as many of you will know, is kind of a very kind of old ancient order, very ancient guild in the Elder Scrolls universe, and they're very mysterious in the way they do things. I think a lot of people will come to know them from the kind of few interactions we have with them in the Mages Guild questline in Skyrim, and if you're confused to what that is the College of Winterhold questline. And apparently we were able to join the Sigil Order in this, or definitely, if not join it, have a heavy influence on what they're able to do as a guild, because we get a new skill line which is around the Sigil Order, which has different things like undo and different skill lines like that, and freeze time and everything, that freezes enemies and everything. And so adding definitely cool new skills to the ability of what the player can definitely achieve, so that's definitely going to be adding to the long-term plays of the game. Well, for us to go into it, when you're the kind of person who's like me, who's gone into the game a few times and kind of wants kind of new skills to kind of break that combat loop that we're kind of used to every time we play the game, that skill line could definitely add to some new interesting abilities to be able to do to kind of spice things up a little bit. But also I think what makes it really interesting as well is how it seems that they're really getting wrapped up in kind of, if we're going to be honest, a complicated aspect of the Elder Scrolls lore, and they're definitely running with it as a story, and that gives me a lot of confidence, because I know that I've had a video before where I've, you know, said that Elder Scrolls Online at times has been inconsistent with the lore and everything, and, you know, lore should be there to serve the game, and it definitely seems that the lore serving the game aspect is something that they're doing along with Summerset, because, you know, the island of Summerset as a whole is definitely surrounded by magic. So setting a game there, it's like, you know, we're going to have all these new abilities and everything, and going to spice up the gameplay. How can we explain that? Well, let's go to a big magical cult, basically, and an ancient order that's famous in the Elder Scrolls. Okay, let's go there. We've got a couple of lore masters at hand who know a lot about the Sigil Order. Let's expand that story further and teach more about them. And to be honest with you, I think that's kind of really, really interesting, and that's something that I'd definitely be looking to play into as well. And in my opinion, the Elder Scrolls Online, when it came out, I don't think when it came out it was really for us, you know, the single-player Elder Scrolls fans. It wasn't really there. It was kind of one who, if you liked Elder Scrolls and liked the theme of Elder Scrolls, but liked playing with your friends more, it kind of seems to be that kind of game where you can kind of go around and quest them and stuff. And while the game had a poor launch and was definitely broken in regards to what you could play with your friends, once they fixed that stuff, it became really good for that kind of market. You know, not too into MMOs, not too into the Elder Scrolls games, but if you kind of liked both and wanted to play with your friends, it kind of seemed a real good MMO to be able to do that. Whereas now, I think they're making the steps in the right direction. We've had the Orsinium expansion we added to a lot of the story in regards to the Orcs, and while it was inconsistent with the lore of how big Orsinium was, it definitely added to a better single-player story. With the one Tamriel expansion, not an expansion, update, sorry, where they made the leveling system of enemies level to you like it is in Oblivion, so it made exploring a lot easier, and you could be able to go to any aspect of the world of Tamriel, in the zone that you're in, to be able to quest in that area instead of having to build up around it to be able to get a high enough level to go from zone to zone to zone. Then we had the Morrowind expansion, which was one where you go back to Vardenfell and go through the story of Morrowind. Not the story of Morrowind again, but be able to see how Vardenfell's taken up in that time and be able to see iconic locations that we saw in the past. And now Summerset, which is very much focused around, you know, building the world and increasing the population of the world of what Summerset tends to be by making it seem more alive and stuff you can do inside to side and everything, is another step in the right direction. By the face of it, the expansion's not out yet, but what people in the beta are saying, and what people who have definitely, you know, seen a lot of the game and interviewed people and been to events and stuff about Summerset are saying, it definitely seems to be another step in the right direction for getting the Elder Scrolls player back. And if I'm going to be honest with you, more steps like these in the right direction, it will get me coming back a lot more frequently than what I am at the minute. Because the big thing, what I'm at when it comes down to it, is that when I played The Elder Scrolls Online and I kind of want to absorb the story, there's not really, it's the kind of, I want that kind of fresh take on it when I go from zone to zone to zone, which I don't tend to get in the main game that much. Whereas Morrowind and Summerset, these two major expansions, tend to add that new fresh take on things and everything. And I definitely will want to be giving these a go in some point in the near future. But let me know what you think. Are you looking forward to Summerset? Are you going to give it a go? I want to know what the people who haven't played The Elder Scrolls Online in a long time think. Or maybe if you're an Elder Scrolls fan who never played The Elder Scrolls Online, is this going to be something that's going to drag you in just so you can see Summerset? You know, what is it about The Elder Scrolls Online that kind of turned you off? And maybe I'll make a video about that sometime that, you know, where I can kind of fully explain in more detail about what I felt like The Elder Scrolls Online needed to do at the time when I left and what steps it's making into achieving that. Because I definitely think that the game is making steps in the right direction to getting people back into it, and you know, the more steps like these the better, and I'm definitely, you know, more inclined to play the game again to be able to give these expansions a go. But let me know what you think about The Elder Scrolls Online, especially with the Summerset expansion. Are you looking forward to see how they handle the Sigil Order and the lore around it and everything, about how the world of Summerset is going to be different to the other parts of Tamriel? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.